What if everything you believed about getting old was wrong? Evelyn stared at the cracked windowpane of her kitchen, the autumn sun casting long shadows across the faded linoleum floor. Her hands, once nimble and quick, now trembled slightly as she reached for her half-empty coffee cup. The silence in the house was suffocating, no laughter, no chatter, just the slow tick of the wall clock counting down moments she felt slipping away. At 68, Evelyn felt invisible, like a ghost wandering through her own life. The calendar on the wall was a tattered reminder of days once filled with promise, now seemingly meaningless. What am I doing with the rest of my days, she wondered, bitterness creeping into her thoughts. She felt forgotten, not just by the world, but by herself. The dreams she once held tight seemed like distant stars now, fading beyond reach. Her daughter rarely called, her friends were either busy with their own lives or gone, and the grief of losing her husband 5 years ago still weighed heavy on her heart. On the television, a news segment flickered to life. The camera focused on Elon Musk, his voice steady and fearless. Failure is an option here. If things aren't failing, you're not innovating enough. The words hit her like a jolt of electricity, a spark she hadn't felt in years. Here was a man half her age talking about failure not as a dead end but as a stepping stone. If he could see the value in trying despite odds, why couldn't she? The kitchen seemed less cold now, the silence less daunting. That night, Evelyn sat down at the old oak table, her fingers hovering over the dusty keyboard of her laptop. She hesitated, but then typed a single sentence, "Today, I start again." For a moment, the past year's regret and loneliness faded. The idea that maybe, just maybe, she still had time to matter, to be seen, to change, began to take root in her heart. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Evelyn didn't know it yet, but this small act of courage was the first step on a journey that would challenge everything she thought about aging and invisibility. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, she'd face doubt, loneliness, setbacks, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. Elon Musk's words weren't just empty bravado, they were a challenge, a call to defy limits and rewrite her story. The moment it all changed wasn't a sudden explosion, it was a quiet turning, a whispered promise that life, at any age, still held possibilities. As the night deepened, Evelyn's fingers moved steadily across the keys, writing not just words but reclaiming a part of herself she thought lost forever. This was the beginning, not just of a story, but of a new life waiting to be lived. Evelyn's life before this moment of awakening was painted with muted colors, days blending into one another with a rhythm shaped by routines, regrets, and quiet loneliness. She was a retired schoolteacher, once full of energy and purpose, known for her sharp wit and warm smile that could light up any classroom. But now, in her late 60s, that spark had dimmed under the weight of missed opportunities and faded relationships. Her house, nestled in a small Midwestern town, felt like a museum of her past, framed photographs of a younger Evelyn with her late husband, Mark, on vacations and holidays, worn-out books lining the shelves, and the dusty manuscript of a novel she never finished hidden in the bottom drawer of her desk. The dreams she held tightly in her youth had slipped away, buried under the responsibilities of raising a family and navigating a life that wasn't always kind. Evelyn often thought about the novel she started writing in her 40s, a story she believed could change her life. But life, with its endless demands, pulled her away. The manuscript remained unfinished, gathering dust, a symbol of the what-ifs that haunted her days. She remembered that afternoon vividly, the one golden day when she typed the last line of her first short story and felt a surge of pride and hope. The sunlight had poured through the window, warming the room as her fingers danced over the keys. Back then, she believed she was destined for more than a quiet, ordinary life. But over time, those bright dreams faded, replaced by the humdrum of teaching, the aches of aging, and the loneliness that crept in after Mark's death. The house was too quiet now, the silence a constant reminder of what was lost. Her daughter, Claire, had moved across the country, building a life of her own that didn't leave much room for phone calls or visits. The few conversations they had were polite but distant, filled with unspoken tension and the ache of years apart. Evelyn longed for connection but was afraid to reach out too much, fearing rejection or disappointment. Sometimes she caught herself watching the clock, waiting for a call that never came. The community around her seemed to move at a pace that left her behind. New technologies, social trends, even the way people communicated felt foreign and inaccessible. She was a stranger in her own time, watching younger generations rush forward while she remained stuck in memories. Physical aches and health issues added to her sense of decline. The doctor's words echoed in her mind, "Take it easy, Evelyn. You're not as young as you used to be." But inside, she felt restless, frustrated by the idea that age meant giving up. She wanted to scream that she was still here, still capable, still deserving of purpose and joy. Yet, the fear of failing again, of disappointing herself or others, held her back. Evelyn's daily routine was a series of small motions: making breakfast, tending to the garden she once loved, watching television, and trying to keep the house clean enough to feel decent. But beneath this surface of quiet survival was a storm of emotions she rarely expressed. She missed Mark's laughter, the warmth of his hand in hers, the plans they had dreamed of but never made real. She missed being seen, not just as a widow or an elderly woman, but as someone vibrant and alive. That key memory of the afternoon she finished her short story became both a beacon and a burden. It reminded her of who she was but also how far she drifted from that person. She wondered if she still had it in her to chase that feeling again or if it was too late to reclaim the passions buried under decades of compromise. And then, there was the quiet judgment she felt from others, neighbors who whispered about her as that lonely woman, distant family members who saw her as a burden or irrelevant. Evelyn's sense of invisibility was crushing. She often caught herself shrinking into the background, hoping not to be noticed, afraid of being forgotten. But the truth was she craved recognition, connection, and the chance to prove that she was still someone worth knowing. As the years wore on, Evelyn became more aware of how society treated aging, not as a stage of growth but as a slow decline toward oblivion. She hated feeling boxed in by stereotypes of too old or past your prime. Her heart rebelled against the idea that her best days were behind her. Yet, breaking free felt impossible. She was trapped in a story that others had written for her, one she'd come to believe herself. But buried deep inside was a flicker, a longing for change, a whisper that said maybe she wasn't done yet. And then, that night when Elon Musk's voice broke through the silence, Evelyn felt that flicker ignite into a flame. His words about failure and innovation stirred something rebellious within her, challenging the beliefs that had held her captive. If a man half her age could embrace risk and uncertainty, why couldn't she? That night, Evelyn felt the first real stirrings of hope she had felt in years. She sat at her old desk, fingers trembling as she reached for her laptop, the keys cold beneath her touch. It was a small act, barely noticeable to the world outside her window, but for Evelyn, it was a declaration, a refusal to accept invisibility, a promise to herself that she would try again. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing: she was ready to fight for it. The life before this shift was a life of quiet fading, but Evelyn was about to learn that even at 68, the spark of change could ignite a wildfire. Her story was far from over. She was ready to reclaim the pages left blank and write the chapters of a new beginning. Evelyn sat alone in her favorite chair by the window, staring out at the gray sky, her mind a storm of doubt and frustration. The question that haunted her most was simple but relentless: is it too late? At 68, she felt trapped between the desire to change and the weight of years that told her she should slow down, accept the fading. The silence in the house was heavy with memories and missed chances, but the loudest voice was the one inside her head telling her she was irrelevant, that no one cared about the dreams of an old woman. She wrestled with a deep inner war. On one side was the spark Elon Musk's words had lit inside her, a challenge to dare, to try, to fail and try again. On the other side was the exhaustion of decades spent putting others first, the cautious voice of her doctor urging, "Take it easy," the judgmental whispers of society telling her to step back and let youth take the stage. Her daughter Claire's voice echoed in her mind, tinged with skepticism. "Mom, why chase this now? Isn't it time to enjoy peace?" But Evelyn's heart burned with something more, a quiet defiance against the idea that her story was over. Every morning, she woke up to the same internal battle. She wanted to write, to reach out, to be seen, but fear held her frozen. What if she failed again? What if her daughter was right and she was just wasting time? The fear of rejection and disappointment was almost paralyzing. Then, there was the world outside her small home, fast-moving, digital, and seemingly designed for the young and the new. She felt like a relic, a forgotten figure sitting on the sidelines while others raced ahead. Her own reflection in the mirror sometimes startled her, the lines on her face telling stories she wasn't ready to face, the thinning hair, the slowing steps. But alongside that image was the woman who still dreamed, still hoped. One evening, as she flipped through a podcast on her aging phone, she landed on an episode featuring Elon Musk. His voice was calm but unyielding. "When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor." The word struck a chord so deep it shook loose some of the fear clutching her heart. If Elon Musk could challenge the impossible, launch rockets, build electric cars, and redefine industries, could Evelyn not challenge her own limits? Could she rewrite her story? That night, she tried again. She opened her laptop and began to type, but the words faltered. Doubt crept in. Who will read this? Does it matter? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then retreated. The familiar self-doubt whispered, louder than ever, telling her to quit before she started. She closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling, tears gathering in her eyes. It felt like a war inside, a tug of war between hope and despair. Days passed with this painful rhythm. Evelyn's daughter called, their conversation polite but strained. Claire worried about her mother pushing too hard, living in the past. "You have to accept things, Mom," she said softly. "You can't change everything." The words stung, but Evelyn knew they came from love, and from a place of fear. The fear that Evelyn might get hurt again, that she might stumble in this new path. Evelyn longed for support but felt isolated. The world around her was changing too fast, and she was struggling just to keep up. Yet, amidst this turmoil, the flicker of Elon Musk's words kept burning. Failure was not a sign to stop but a signal to try again, to innovate, to push boundaries. She started writing short sentences in her journal each morning, little mantras to keep herself going. "I can do this. It's never too late. Every step counts." The process was slow and painful, but it was movement. She even tried to reach out to a local community center for writing classes, only to be told that most programs catered to younger adults or that the waitlist was long. It was a reminder of how disconnected she felt, not just emotionally but practically, from the world she wanted to join. One day, while scrolling through social media, Evelyn saw a clip of Elon Musk explaining how he faced massive skepticism when starting SpaceX. People told him he was crazy, that he'd fail. But he kept going. He embraced risk and learned from mistakes. The idea that someone so public and successful battled doubt and rejection resonated deeply. Evelyn realized that fear wasn't a sign of weakness, it was part of the journey. This understanding didn't erase her fears but gave her a new lens to view them through. She wasn't alone in this fight, even if it felt like it. That evening, Evelyn tried something new. Instead of focusing on a finished product, she wrote a letter to her daughter, not perfect, just honest. She told Claire about the dreams she'd once had, the regrets she carried, and the small hope she now nurtured to try again. It was raw and vulnerable, the kind of message she had avoided for years. She hesitated before hitting send, unsure if Claire would respond or be upset. But pressing send was a small rebellion against her own fear. The days that followed were some of the hardest. Evelyn waited anxiously for a reply that felt like a lifeline. When the message finally came, it was cautious but kind. Claire admitted she didn't fully understand but wanted to support her mother's courage. It wasn't the full reconciliation Evelyn hoped for, but it was a start. This exchange gave her strength. She began to see that change wouldn't come all at once. There would be setbacks, doubts, moments of loneliness, but also moments of connection, hope, and growth. The inner war was far from over, but Evelyn was learning to live with the tension, to hold space for fear and hope at the same time. She realized that the hardest part of change was not the obstacles outside but the battles inside. Every time she faced those doubts and kept moving forward, she won a small victory. Elon Musk's example was no longer just a distant idea, it was a roadmap for her own courage, to embrace failure, to challenge the limits placed on her by age and society, and to refuse invisibility. Evelyn knew the path ahead would be full of tests, but for the first time in a long time, she believed she could rise to meet them. The inner war was ongoing, but now she fought with a new weapon, hope. Evelyn woke the next morning with a quiet determination she hadn't felt in years. The inner war still raged, but she had made a choice, she would do one thing differently. It wasn't a grand gesture, no sweeping changes or dramatic promises. It was something small, something Elon Musk himself believed in, starting with a single step and building momentum from there. She decided she would write 200 words a day. 200 words might seem insignificant to some, but for Evelyn, it was a bold declaration against the years of silence and self-doubt. She cleared the dust off her old laptop, the keys cold and unwelcoming beneath her fingers. She opened a blank document and stared at the cursor blinking like a heartbeat waiting for life. Her first words were shaky, hesitant, but they were hers. She wrote about the morning light through her kitchen window, the creak of the old floorboards, the ache in her knees, the ordinary details of a life that felt invisible but was hers to claim. That small act of writing daily became a ritual, a defiant beacon against the fading. She felt the thrill of creation and the sting of uncertainty all at once. Would anyone read these words? Would they matter? She pushed the questions aside and focused on the act itself. To keep herself accountable, Evelyn joined an online writing group for seniors she found through a community forum. She was nervous at first, unsure if she belonged among younger writers and tech-savvy participants. But the group welcomed her warmly, a patchwork of stories, struggles, and dreams from people just like her. Sharing her daily progress, even the small victories and moments of frustration, gave her a newfound sense of connection and purpose. It was a light in the loneliness that had gripped her for so long. Encouraged by the group's support, Evelyn began to open up more. She shared pieces of her unfinished novel and short stories, inviting feedback and conversation. Each comment felt like a lifeline, proof that her voice still mattered. One morning, after weeks of steady writing, she sent an email to her daughter Claire. The message was simple and honest, "I'm trying something new. I'm writing again. I'd love to share it with you if you want." Sending the email was like stepping off a cliff into the unknown. Evelyn waited, heart pounding, fearing rejection or silence. But days later, Claire replied, not with critique, but with curiosity and warmth. She admitted she was proud of her mother's courage and wanted to read more. That response was a turning point. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a bridge across years of distance and misunderstanding. The ripple effect of Evelyn's choice started to grow. She began waking earlier, fitting her writing and a daily walk into her mornings. The walks refreshed her body and mind, the crisp air a reminder that life still pulsed around her. The garden she had once tended reluctantly began to flourish again, each new bloom a symbol of renewal. In the evenings, she read books about writing, biographies of innovators, and interviews with Elon Musk, absorbing their wisdom and tenacity. His mindset, fearless, relentless, unafraid of failure, became her silent coach. She often whispered his quotes aloud when the doubts crept back: "Persistence is very important. You should not give up unless you are forced to give up. There were days when the weight of loneliness and self-doubt threatened to undo her progress. When her fingers hovered over the keyboard and then retreated, paralyzed by fear. But each time, she reminded herself that failure was not defeat. It was part of the process. Slowly, the words on the page grew stronger, clearer, more alive. Her writing evolved from hesitant sketches to vivid stories filled with emotion and depth. One piece she wrote, a heartfelt letter to the younger version of herself, resonated deeply within her. It was a message of compassion, forgiveness, and hope. The online writing group praised it, encouraging her to submit it to a local magazine for older adults. Nervous but emboldened, Evelyn sent it off. Weeks passed, and one morning she received an email. Her letter had been accepted for publication. Reading that news, tears blurred her vision. She had taken a small step, and it had led to something real, something tangible. Her story was being seen, her voice heard. Encouraged, Evelyn expanded her reach. She started a simple blog titled Second Chances, where she posted her daily writing, reflections, and snippets of inspiration. She wasn't chasing fame, but connection, proof that life could be full of meaning at any age. Slowly, the comments trickled in, strangers from across the country sharing their own stories of renewal, offering encouragement, and thanking her for the courage to speak out. One commenter, a woman named Janice from Ohio, wrote, "Your words remind me I'm not alone. You inspire me to start my own journey." Evelyn replied, and soon they were exchanging messages regularly, a friendship born from shared courage. That small act of reaching out to a stranger was another step breaking down the walls of isolation. Yet the journey was not without setbacks. A family friend dismissed her efforts with a cruel joke about living in the past and wasting time. Evelyn felt the sting but refused to let it silence her. She remembered Elon's rebellious spirit. The willingness to push against convention and skepticism. She decided to write an essay about overcoming naysayers, channeling her hurt into strength. When a winter storm left her house without power for 2 days, Evelyn found herself disconnected, cut off from her writing routine and the small community that had become her lifeline. The cold and darkness crept into her bones, tempting her to give up, to accept the fading. But in those quiet hours, she realized that true change wasn't about perfection or constant progress, it was about resilience. When the lights flickered back on, she sat at her laptop and typed with renewed determination. As spring arrived, Evelyn's life felt transformed, not because everything was perfect, but because she had taken control of her story again. The act of choosing one thing to change, writing 200 words a day, had rekindled a fire that had smoldered beneath the ashes for years. She no longer felt invisible or forgotten. She was visible. To herself and to others. In this new chapter, Evelyn was not waiting for permission to matter. She was taking it. Her daughter Claire visited that spring, staying longer than before. They sat together in the garden, reading Evelyn's published letter and talking late into the evening. The walls between them softened, and a fragile, beautiful connection began to heal. Evelyn realized that this small choice, the one thing she changed, was the catalyst for so much more. It wasn't just about writing, it was about reclaiming her identity, her voice, and her place in the world. It was about proving that it was never too late to start again, to be bold, to get noticed, not by fame or fortune, but by the simple act of living fully and authentically. Elon Musk's example was not a distant, unreachable ideal but a guiding light, a reminder that the power to change was inside her all along. Evelyn knew there would be more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt and fear. But she was ready to face them. She had learned the value of one small choice, one daily step, one act of courage. And with that, she was unstoppable. The morning sun filtered softly through the lace curtains of Evelyn's living room, casting warm patterns on the worn carpet. She sat at her desk, fingers poised above the keyboard, heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and vulnerability. Today was different. Today, Evelyn wasn't just writing for herself. She was ready to share her story with the world beyond her small online community. The acceptance letter from the local magazine had been a catalyst, but now she faced the true test, letting her words, her truth, be seen and judged by strangers. Her hands trembled slightly as she clicked "Publish" on her blog's new post, a deeply personal essay about loss, hope, and the courage to start over in later life. The words were raw, unfiltered, the kind of writing she never imagined sharing beyond her journal. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the soft hum of her computer. Then, like a ripple spreading across a still pond, the notifications began. Comments appeared, messages of encouragement from people across the country who found hope in her story. "You gave me the courage to pick up my paintbrush again," wrote a man in Florida. "Your words remind me I'm not alone," said a woman in Washington state. Tears slipped down Evelyn's cheeks as she read each message, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and pride. She had broken through the walls of invisibility that had held her captive for so long. That breakthrough wasn't just about online comments or recognition. It was about reclaiming her voice and identity after years of silence. Her writing was no longer a secret dream but a living testament to resilience and renewal. But the breakthrough also came with vulnerability. Evelyn knew that exposing her heart made her open to criticism and rejection. A few comments were dismissive, questioning why someone her age would even try to reinvent themselves. Some suggested she was foolish to chase impossible dreams. Those words stung sharply, cutting through the hope she had built. Yet, she clung to Elon Musk's words echoing in her mind, "Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough." She realized that resistance was part of the process. The voices of doubt were reminders that true change always challenges the status quo, especially for someone her age trying to rewrite what aging looked like. Around this time, Evelyn received a surprise message from an old friend, Tom, whom she hadn't seen since their high school days. He had stumbled upon her blog and was moved by her honesty and courage. Tom was a retired engineer, himself navigating the challenges of aging with resilience. Their renewed friendship blossomed over emails and phone calls, a bridge across decades that reminded Evelyn of the power of connection. Together, they shared stories of lost dreams and new beginnings, finding in each other a mirror of hope and strength. Evelyn's small daily steps had created a ripple far beyond what she imagined. One afternoon, she received an invitation to speak at a local senior center about her journey. The thought terrified her. Public speaking was not something she had ever envisioned for herself. But with the encouragement of her new online community and Tom's steady support, she accepted. Standing before a modest crowd of 50 or so seniors in a bright but simple community hall, Evelyn's voice wavered at first. But as she shared her story, the doubts, the fears, the small victories, she felt a profound connection with the faces before her. Many nodded, some wiped away tears. Afterwards, a woman approached, gripping Evelyn's hand tightly. "You've given me hope," she said. "I've been afraid to try anything new because of my age. You show me it's possible." That moment was a powerful reminder. Evelyn's breakthrough was no longer just personal. It was becoming a beacon for others who felt forgotten or stuck. Back at home, buoyed by this experience, Evelyn expanded her blog's scope, including interviews with other seniors defying expectations, stories of reinvention and courage. She even started a podcast series titled "Never Too Late," featuring conversations about aging, purpose, and the power of persistence. The podcast gained traction, touching lives across the country and connecting a community hungry for inspiration. But Evelyn's breakthrough wasn't just external. Inside, she felt a profound shift in how she viewed herself. She was no longer the woman who waited silently in the shadows, burdened by regret and fear. She was an active creator of her life's narrative, bold enough to challenge stereotypes and step into the spotlight. There were still hard days, moments when loneliness returned with a heavy weight or doubts whispered that she wasn't enough. But Evelyn met those moments with new tools, community, purpose, and the unshakable belief that growth was possible at any age. She thought often about Elon Musk, the symbol of radical possibility who had sparked this transformation. His fearless mindset reminded her that limits were often illusions, barriers erected by fear rather than reality. In this way, she was changing the story of what aging meant, not just for herself, but for everyone watching. One evening, Evelyn received an unexpected email from a producer at a regional TV station. They wanted to feature her story, a profile on a woman proving that courage and reinvention had no expiration date. The interview was nerve-wracking but exhilarating. Sitting under the bright studio lights, Evelyn spoke openly about her journey, the struggles, the breakthroughs, and the simple choice that had set everything in motion. When the segment aired, the response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from viewers inspired by her courage and honesty. For the first time in decades, Evelyn felt truly noticed, not because of fame or fortune, but because her authentic self had been seen and embraced. She realized that the breakthrough she had feared was not an endpoint but a doorway, a gateway to deeper growth, connection, and purpose. As spring turned to summer, Evelyn's life blossomed in ways she never imagined possible. She continued to write, speak, and inspire, her days filled with meaning and joy. The novel she had once abandoned began to take shape again, richer and more honest than before. She embraced her age not as a limitation but as a source of wisdom and strength. Reflecting on this breakthrough, Evelyn understood that the true victory was not in external validation but in reclaiming her voice and refusing to fade away. She was no longer invisible or forgotten. She had broken through. And in doing so, she had become a symbol of hope for anyone who believed it was too late to change. The moment it all changed was not a sudden explosion but a series of small acts of courage, each one building on the last until a new life emerged from the ashes. Evelyn's story was living proof that with a spark, sometimes as simple as a single choice inspired by a fearless mind like Elon Musk's, anyone could ignite a new beginning, no matter their age. And as she looked out the window at the blossoming garden she tended with renewed love, she whispered to herself, "I was never too old. I was just waiting to believe it." That belief was the greatest breakthrough of all. Evelyn sat quietly on the front porch of her modest home, the late afternoon sun casting golden hues over the neighborhood she had known for decades. The garden she had tended through seasons of grief and renewal was now bursting with life, bright tulips, hardy roses, and wildflowers dancing in the breeze. She breathed in the scent of earth and blossoms and felt a profound sense of peace settle in her chest. It was hard to believe how much had changed in such a short time, yet every step had been real, raw, and full of struggle. As she gazed out at the familiar street, memories flooded her mind, some painful, others sweet, but all part of the mosaic that shaped who she was. Years ago, Evelyn had believed her story was closing, that her best days were behind her, lost in regret and missed chances. But now, in the quiet of this golden hour, she understood something deeper. This was not an ending but a beginning. A new legacy unfolding with each word she wrote, every conversation she sparked, every connection she made. The journey had transformed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was no longer defined by the silence of loneliness or the shadow of doubt. Instead, she was a voice rising steadily, a force quietly challenging the narrative of what aging meant in a world obsessed with youth. Her daughter Claire's recent visit still echoed warmly in her mind. Their conversations had shifted from polite distance to heartfelt exchange, bridging gaps built over years. Claire had told her, "Mom, you're inspiring me. Watching you fight for your dreams makes me want to chase my own." Those words, tender and unexpected, were perhaps the most precious gift of all. Evelyn knew the work wasn't done, the healing, the dreaming, the creating were ongoing. But she felt equipped now with tools far more powerful than she ever imagined: courage, hope, and a fierce refusal to be invisible. The blog, Second Chances, had grown beyond a simple platform. It had become a community where seniors shared stories of reinvention, resilience, and joy. Evelyn found herself mentoring others, encouraging those who felt stuck, reminding them that it was never too late to start. The letters and messages she received were constant reminders that her voice mattered, that her courage had sparked countless others to believe in themselves again. Sometimes, in the stillness of the night, Evelyn reflected on Elon Musk, the symbol of fearless innovation who had sparked her transformation. His refusal to accept limitations, his relentless pursuit of the impossible, had become a beacon guiding her through the darkest moments. She realized that Musk's greatest lesson wasn't about rockets or electric cars, it was about mindset, the willingness to challenge norms, to fail and learn, to keep moving forward when the world says stop. Evelyn's legacy was now tied to that same spirit, a quiet rebellion against invisibility and complacency. One afternoon, Evelyn received a phone call from a local school principal who had heard about her story through the community center. They invited her to speak to a class of high school students about resilience and pursuing passion regardless of age or circumstance. Nervous but eager, Evelyn accepted. Standing before a sea of young faces, she shared not just her story but the lessons she had learned about courage, failure, and the power of starting small. She saw eyes widen, hands raise with questions, and heard whispers of inspiration ripple through the room. It struck her that legacy wasn't just about what you leave behind when you're gone. It was about the impact you made while you were here. Every conversation, every act of bravery, every shared story planted seeds that could bloom far beyond her lifetime. At home, Evelyn continued to nurture her writing. The novel she had abandoned years ago now took shape, infused with the wisdom of her experiences and the richness of her renewed spirit. The characters she created wrestled with their own fears and hopes, mirroring her journey in ways that felt deeply healing. Sometimes she read passages aloud to Tom, her old friend and confidant, whose encouragement never wavered. Together, they dreamed of publishing the book and reaching even more people who felt lost or forgotten. Evelyn also embraced the joy of simple pleasures, the warmth of morning coffee, the sound of birdsong outside her window, the laughter shared with new friends at the community center. These moments, she realized, were the threads weaving the fabric of her new life. Yet, amid the peace, Evelyn never forgot the darker days, the moments when fear threatened to swallow her whole, when loneliness wrapped tight like a shroud. Those memories fueled her commitment to keep pushing forward, to be a beacon for others navigating similar battles. She understood now that aging was not a slow fading but a series of new beginnings, each one demanding courage and choice. One spring morning, as she tended the garden, Evelyn paused to reflect on a letter she had recently received from a woman named Marlene, a reader of her blog from a small town in Texas. Marlene wrote about her own journey of reclaiming purpose after losing her husband and battling illness. "Your words saved me from giving up," she wrote. "Thank you for showing me it's never too late." Evelyn held the letter close, feeling the profound connection across miles and experience. This was the true legacy she was building, not trophies or accolades, but lives touched, hope rekindled, and the quiet knowledge that she had mattered. As the sun dipped lower, Evelyn stood and looked out over the garden one last time before heading inside. She whispered softly to herself, "I thought it was the end, but it was just the beginning." The story she once feared was over was still unfolding, richer and more vibrant than ever. She was living proof that no matter the years behind you, the future holds endless possibilities. Evelyn's legacy was no longer a distant dream but a living, breathing testament to the power of resilience, courage, and the unyielding human spirit. She had stopped wasting time. Instead, she had begun to live, and in doing so, inspired countless others to do the same. Evelyn's phone buzzed late one evening, a message notification lighting up the dim room where she sat writing by the soft glow of a desk lamp. It was from Claire, her daughter, a simple text that read, "Can we talk?" Those 3 words carried a weight Evelyn hadn't felt in years, a mixture of hope and fear tightening her chest. Their relationship had been strained for so long, stretched thin by distance and unspoken regrets. Evelyn stared at the screen, fingers trembling, heart pounding with cautious optimism. This was the moment she had both longed for and dreaded, a chance to rebuild, to bridge the chasm that had grown over time. Taking a deep breath, she typed back, "Yes. Whenever you're ready." The days that followed were a delicate dance of conversations, some awkward, others surprisingly warm. Claire confessed her own fears of disappointing her mother, of not understanding the life Evelyn had quietly rebuilt. Evelyn shared the struggles she had faced. The loneliness, the doubts, the small victories that had reignited her spirit. They spoke late into the night, unraveling years of pain and misunderstanding thread by fragile thread. It wasn't perfect. There were tears, silences, and moments of frustration. But beneath it all, a fragile hope blossomed. Evelyn realized that healing wasn't about erasing the past but embracing it fully and choosing to move forward. This reconnection gave her a new kind of strength, a renewed purpose to keep pushing against the barriers of age and fear. Inspired by this fragile reconciliation, Evelyn decided to take another bold step. She would host a community workshop on reinventing yourself later in life. Partnering with the Senior Center and her growing online audience, she crafted a program to share her story, practical tips, and the mindset shifts that had transformed her journey. The first workshop was nerve-wracking. Evelyn faced a room full of faces marked by skepticism, weariness, and hidden hope. She began by asking a simple question: what if everything you believed about getting old was wrong? That question hung in the air, stirring quiet reflection. As she shared her own story, her darkest moments and brightest breakthroughs, the room slowly warmed. Hands raised with questions, eyes glistened with tears, and laughter broke through the tension. For many, it was the first time they dared to imagine a new future beyond their perceived limitations. Evelyn guided them through exercises on setting small goals, embracing failure as feedback, and cultivating a mindset of relentless curiosity, the very mindset Elon Musk embodied. She shared Musk's quote, "When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor." The words resonated deeply, sparking sparks of possibility in hearts long dulled by doubt. One attendee, a retired teacher named Helen, later told Evelyn, "You gave me permission to dream again." The workshops became a monthly gathering, a lifeline for those feeling stuck or invisible. Evelyn saw firsthand the ripple effect of one person's courage, the way hope multiplied when shared. At home, Evelyn's own creative fire burned steadily. The novel, once a distant memory, took on new life. She wrote with renewed passion, weaving her own story and the stories of those she met into a tapestry of resilience. The pages filled with characters who, like her, rose from the ashes of fear and regret to embrace a second chance. Yet, the journey wasn't without setbacks. Evelyn faced days when the weight of doubt threatened to overwhelm her. When a harsh review of her published essay landed unexpectedly, criticizing her naive optimism, she felt the sting deeply. But rather than retreat, she remembered Elon Musk's unyielding spirit, the willingness to face criticism, learn, and persevere. She wrote a response, not defensive but honest, about the complexity of hope and the necessity of vulnerability. The exchange sparked a deeper dialogue within her community about embracing imperfection and courage. Through it all, Evelyn discovered a profound truth: rising from the ashes wasn't a single act but a continuous process of falling, getting up, and moving forward with purpose. Each challenge was a crucible forging new strength and clarity. As the months passed, Evelyn's relationship with Claire deepened. They planned a trip together, to visit the coast, a place Evelyn had always dreamed of but never prioritized. The trip was symbolic, a shared journey toward healing and rediscovery. Standing on the shoreline, watching waves crash and foam under a vast sky, Evelyn felt a surge of gratitude and possibility. She whispered to Claire, "This is just the beginning." Claire smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm proud of you, Mom." Evelyn's story was no longer just about personal transformation, it was about the power of connection, forgiveness, and the courage to start anew at any age. Inspired by this, Evelyn expanded her blog and podcast to include stories of reconciliation and healing, inviting guests who shared their own journeys of rebuilding fractured relationships. The community grew, a testament to the universal desire for belonging and renewal. One day, Evelyn received an unexpected invitation to speak at a national conference focused on aging and innovation. The opportunity was daunting, a room filled with experts, policymakers, and media. Yet, Evelyn saw it as a chance to amplify the message that had become her mission: that aging was not a slow decline but a time ripe with potential for reinvention and impact. Preparing for the speech, Evelyn reflected on how far she had come, from a woman who felt invisible and forgotten to a voice inspiring thousands. She rehearsed Elon Musk's words, letting their fearless energy flow through her. Some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change if the alternative is disaster. Standing on that stage months later, bathed in bright lights and facing a sea of faces, Evelyn told her story with honesty and passion. She spoke of fear, failure, hope, and the small choices that sparked transformation. The audience was moved. Some laughed, some cried, and many approached her afterward, eager to connect. The experience was a breakthrough on a grand scale, confirming Evelyn's belief that it was never too late to change, to matter, to make a difference. Returning home, Evelyn felt a quiet joy settle deep within. The journey from despair to empowerment had not been easy, but it was worth every painful, beautiful step. She was no longer a woman waiting in the shadows, she was a woman rising from the ashes, blazing a trail for others to follow. And as she looked ahead to the unwritten chapters of her life, Evelyn knew this truth with unshakable clarity: the fire inside her would never dim again. The early morning air was crisp as Evelyn laced up her worn sneakers, the soft thud of her footsteps on the pavement breaking the quiet stillness of her neighborhood. Each step was deliberate, a gentle reminder that progress, no matter how small, was still progress. For years, Evelyn had believed that transformation required grand gestures, a life upheaval, a dramatic reinvention. But now she understood the truth Elon Musk had shown through his relentless drive: breakthroughs often began with the tiniest actions, repeated with faith and persistence. Walking had become her daily ritual, not just for physical health but as a metaphor for moving forward despite uncertainty. The neighborhood was slowly coming alive, the scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the distant sound of children laughing, a symphony of everyday life that felt both comforting and full of promise. As she walked, Evelyn reflected on the power of small steps in her journey. Writing a single paragraph, making a phone call to an old friend, sending out one email, all these acts had compounded into a transformation that no one had expected. She thought about the countless times she had almost given up, paralyzed by the overwhelming weight of change. Yet, each time she chose to take just one more step forward, the path became clearer, the burden lighter. The lessons from Elon Musk echoed in her mind: you have to be willing to be misunderstood if you're going to innovate. In her case, innovation meant redefining what it meant to age, to dream, to create. It meant rejecting the limiting scripts society had written about people like her. That morning, as she passed the local coffee shop, Evelyn spotted Helen, the retired teacher from her workshop, seated at a corner table with a sketchpad. Helen looked up and smiled warmly, waving her over. Sitting down, Evelyn noticed Helen's sketches, delicate drawings of flowers and faces, capturing beauty with a patient hand. Helen shared how she had started painting again after decades, inspired by Evelyn's words. "It's funny," Helen said, "I always thought I was too old to try something new. But now, each brushstroke feels like reclaiming a piece of myself I forgot existed." Evelyn nodded, feeling the profound truth of that sentiment. Small steps weren't just actions, they were acts of courage, self-love, and defiance against fading away. Inspired, Evelyn resolved to document these everyday victories in her blog, creating a series called Tiny Triumphs. She invited her readers to share their small but meaningful changes, whether it was learning a new recipe, making peace with a family member, or simply stepping outside when fear wanted to keep them in bed. The response was overwhelming. Stories poured in from across the country, each one a testament to the quiet power of persistence. One letter stood out: a man named Joe, 72, who had started volunteering at a local shelter after reading Evelyn's posts. "I never thought I had anything to offer anymore," he wrote, "but now I see how even small actions can light up the world around us." This community of tiny triumphs became a source of strength, a reminder that transformation wasn't reserved for the young or the boldest but was accessible to anyone willing to take the first step. At home, Evelyn's novel grew steadily, fueled by the voices of those who shared their journeys with her. She wove their stories into her characters, creating a rich tapestry of resilience that reflected the many faces of aging courageously. Writing late into the night, she often paused to gaze out the window, imagining the lives she was touching and the legacy she was building one word at a time. Yet, she also faced challenges that tested her resolve. There were mornings when her body ached and the urge to quit whispered seductively. There were moments when the world outside seemed indifferent to her efforts, when loneliness crept back in. But Evelyn met these struggles with a new mindset, one that valued progress over perfection and saw failure as a stepping stone rather than a dead end. She remembered Musk's relentless tinkering, his refusal to settle for good enough, and found inspiration to keep moving forward. One afternoon, Evelyn received a message from a young woman named Maya, a tech entrepreneur in California who had discovered Evelyn's blog through a podcast episode. Maya wrote about feeling stuck in her startup, overwhelmed by doubt and fear. Evelyn responded with encouragement, sharing the lesson of small steps and persistent hope. Their correspondence blossomed into a mentorship of sorts, two women from different generations united by a shared determination to innovate and persevere. Through Maya, Evelyn glimpsed a future where her legacy wasn't just about inspiring her peers but connecting across generations, bridging divides with empathy and courage. As spring turned to summer, Evelyn's daily walks became more than exercise, they were meditation, reflection, and planning. She mapped out new projects, collaborations, and ideas that felt bold yet grounded in the power of incremental change. One morning, she met with a local librarian to organize a book club focused on stories of reinvention and resilience. The group quickly filled with eager participants, hungry for connection and inspiration. Evelyn found joy in these gatherings, seeing how a simple idea could spark new friendships and awaken dormant dreams. The small steps she once doubted had become the foundation of a life rich with purpose and connection. Reflecting on her journey, Evelyn realized that embracing the power of small steps had shifted her entire perspective on aging and possibility. She was no longer overwhelmed by the vast unknown but energized by the unfolding path beneath her feet. Each day held promise, each action a seed planted for growth. She thought back to the moment she first heard Elon Musk's quote about embracing failure and change. That moment had been a spark, now, it was a steady flame guiding her forward. Evelyn understood that the legacy she was building wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic transformations but about the quiet, persistent courage to keep moving, even when the world told her to slow down or give up. She had stopped wasting time waiting for permission or perfection. Instead, she had chosen to act, to dream, and to live fully at every stage. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the garden she tended with care, Evelyn whispered to herself, "The smallest step forward is still a step towards something greater." And with that, she laced up her shoes once more, stepping out into the twilight with a heart full of hope and a spirit unbreakable. Evelyn felt the weight of the world's expectations pressing down on her as she sat in the cramped waiting room of the local clinic. The walls, painted a dull beige, seemed to close in, echoing the unspoken judgment she felt from every glance and whispered comment. At 68, she was no stranger to the subtle ways society dismissed people her age, labels like, "past your prime," "set in your ways," or worse, "too old to change." The doctor's earlier words still echoed in her mind, "You should slow down, Evelyn. Your body can't keep up like it used to." It was the kind of advice that felt like a sentence, a reminder that she was expected to retreat, to settle into a quieter, less ambitious life. But Evelyn refused to accept that narrative. Deep inside, a fire burned, a fierce refusal to be confined by age or expectation. She thought about Elon Musk, whose relentless challenge to norms had fueled her own transformation. His audacity to dream beyond limits, to push through barriers, inspired her to question every assumption about what was possible for someone her age. That evening, back in the sanctuary of her home, Evelyn scrolled through a news feed filled with stories of innovation, risk-taking, and reinvention. Musk's latest ventures into space exploration and sustainable energy were front and center, symbols of relentless progress. She paused on a quote that seemed to leap off the screen, "Don't confuse schooling with education. I didn't go to college. The words were a challenge to convention. A reminder that success and growth were not bound by traditional paths or timelines. Inspired, Evelyn made a bold decision. She would enroll in an online course on creative writing, something she had shelved decades ago, believing it was too late to pursue. Signing up felt like defiance, a declaration that age was not a cage but a stage for new beginnings. The first weeks were humbling. Evelyn wrestled with unfamiliar technology and self-doubt that whispered she was out of place. Yet, each completed assignment, each new concept grasped, was a victory. She found herself not just learning but thriving, rediscovering the joy of curiosity and growth. The course connected her with a diverse group of students, ranging from recent high school graduates to retirees like herself. The generational mix sparked vibrant discussions about creativity, perseverance, and the evolving meaning of success. Evelyn shared her story openly, encouraging others to see aging as an opportunity rather than a limitation. Her classmates admired her courage and resilience, and she, in turn, found fresh energy in their youthful enthusiasm and perspectives. Meanwhile, Evelyn's blog began featuring interviews with unconventional seniors who defied stereotypes, artists, entrepreneurs, activists who were rewriting the rules of aging. These stories resonated deeply with her readers, sparking conversations about what it truly meant to grow older in a world obsessed with youth. One profile that captivated Evelyn was about Harold, a 74-year-old former engineer who had launched a startup focused on renewable energy solutions. His story mirrored many of her own struggles and triumphs, reinforcing the message that reinvention was always within reach. Evelyn invited Harold to join a live podcast episode, and their conversation became a powerful testament to challenging norms and embracing change. The podcast episode went viral within their community, drawing attention from local media and inspiring many to reconsider their own potential. Evelyn realized that by sharing these stories, she was building more than just a platform, she was cultivating a movement. A movement that questioned the narrative society imposed and celebrated the fearless spirit of those who refused to fade quietly. The local library invited Evelyn to curate an exhibit showcasing art and achievements of seniors who broke molds and defied expectations. The opening night was electric, a room filled with vibrant paintings, innovative inventions, and inspiring biographies. Evelyn stood at the center, overwhelmed with gratitude and pride. This was the tangible proof that change was possible at any age. Yet, not all feedback was positive. Some critics dismissed the movement as unrealistic or selfish, saying seniors should accept their place in society. Evelyn took these criticisms as fuel rather than defeat. She penned an essay titled "The Right to Reinvent," sharing her belief that every individual, regardless of age, deserved the chance to pursue passion, purpose, and growth. The essay sparked passionate debates and galvanized support from unexpected corners. Through it all, Evelyn's relationship with Claire deepened, marked by honest conversations about fear, hope, and the pressure to conform. Claire admitted her own struggles with societal expectations and found solace in her mother's defiance. Together, they dreamed of creating a foundation to support seniors in pursuing education and entrepreneurship, a legacy project that would carry Evelyn's mission forward. As summer waned, Evelyn found herself invited to speak at a regional conference on aging innovation. Preparing her speech, she reflected on her journey, on the moments when she had almost surrendered and the sparks that kept her going. Standing on the stage weeks later, Evelyn faced an audience of policymakers, educators, and advocates. She spoke not just about her own story but about the systemic barriers that kept so many from realizing their potential. She challenged them to rethink aging, to invest in programs that encouraged lifelong learning and creativity. Her words were met with standing ovations and heartfelt conversations that extended long after the event ended. Returning home, Evelyn felt a profound sense of purpose. She was no longer simply surviving her later years, she was reshaping them. Through every small act of rebellion against the norms, she was carving a path for others to follow, a path illuminated by courage, curiosity, and unyielding hope. She whispered to herself, "Age is not a limit. It's a new frontier." The fire inside her burned brighter than ever, a beacon for those ready to challenge the status quo and embrace the limitless possibilities of a life fully lived. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Evelyn sat quietly in the dim light of her living room, the soft hum of her laptop the only sound breaking the stillness. She had just closed a long video call with Maya, her young tech entrepreneur friend from California, whose energy and determination never failed to ignite something inside her. Maya had shared her latest struggles, funding challenges, technical setbacks, moments when doubt crept in, and Evelyn had listened, offering words of encouragement rooted in the wisdom of years and the lessons learned from her own journey. After the call ended, Evelyn stared at the blank screen, feeling an unexpected surge of resolve. The idea that she had carried quietly for months, launching her own online course on creative reinvention for seniors, was no longer just a dream. It was time to act. The fear of failure, the uncertainty of starting something new at her age, threatened to hold her back, but she remembered Elon Musk's relentless spirit: when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. This wasn't just important, it was necessary. She opened a new document and began outlining the course curriculum, breaking it down into manageable modules that combined storytelling, practical exercises, and mindset coaching. Evelyn wanted the course to be accessible, engaging, and empowering, a guide for those who felt stuck in the prison of age and self-doubt. The process was exhilarating and exhausting. She wrestled with technology, recording videos, designing worksheets, and learning to navigate online platforms she once thought too complicated. Each small victory fueled her confidence, each setback was met with determination rather than defeat. Word spread quickly. Her blog followers were eager to enroll, hungry for a fresh approach to aging that celebrated creativity and courage. Evelyn received emails from people across the country, many who had never considered themselves students, now excited to learn and grow. One message stood out: a man named Frank, 70, who wrote that her course was the push he needed to start painting again after decades of abandonment. The course launch day was a mix of nerves and excitement. Evelyn sat at her desk, surrounded by notes and coffee cups, refreshing her inbox as enrollment notifications rolled in. The first cohort was small but diverse: retirees, caregivers, artists, former professionals, all united by a desire to reclaim their narratives. The online forum buzzed with energy as participants shared their hopes, fears, and breakthroughs. Evelyn was overwhelmed by the honesty and bravery unfolding before her eyes. She facilitated discussions, encouraged reflection, and shared her own vulnerabilities, creating a space where age was not a barrier but a bridge. One participant, Gloria, a former school principal, wrote about the shame she felt having wasted years in a job that no longer fulfilled her. Through the course, she began exploring photography, discovering a passion she never knew she had. Another student, Carlos, 65, found the courage to reconnect with his estranged son after decades of silence. Evelyn felt honored to witness these transformations, reminders that the courage to start over could heal wounds and open doors long thought closed. The challenges were real. Technical glitches, moments of self-doubt, and the emotional toll of guiding others through their struggles tested Evelyn's stamina. But she leaned into the discomfort, remembering that growth often came dressed as fear. She thought back to the countless stories she had shared and heard. Their common thread was courage, the bravery to face uncertainty, to break patterns, and to dream again. As the course progressed, Evelyn expanded her outreach, partnering with senior centers and libraries to offer hybrid sessions, combining online learning with in-person workshops. These gatherings became vibrant celebrations of creativity and connection, filled with laughter, tears, and the undeniable spark of new beginnings. One evening, after a particularly moving workshop, Evelyn received a surprise visit from Claire. They sat together in the cozy kitchen, sharing a late dinner and stories. Claire admitted she had been inspired to make changes in her own life, rekindling old friendships and pursuing a long-delayed passion for writing. Their bond, once strained, was now a source of mutual support and love. The seed Evelyn had planted so many years ago was finally blooming. Encouraged by the success and impact of her course, Evelyn began dreaming bigger, envisioning a nationwide network of support and education for seniors eager to reinvent themselves. She reached out to local nonprofits, educational institutions, and business leaders, advocating for more inclusive programs that recognize the potential of older adults. Her voice grew stronger, fueled by the stories of those she had touched and the community she was helping build. The media took notice. Interviews, podcasts, and feature articles followed, spotlighting Evelyn's journey and the movement she was leading. Some days, the attention felt overwhelming, other days, it felt like the validation she had long sought. Not for fame, but as proof that her story mattered. Behind the scenes, Evelyn continued to wrestle with personal challenges, health scares, moments of loneliness, and the persistent whisper of self-doubt. Yet, she faced them with grace and grit, knowing that vulnerability was part of the journey. Her mantra, borrowed from Musk, remained her anchor: persistence is very important. You should not give up unless you are forced to give up. One crisp autumn morning, Evelyn received an invitation that brought tears to her eyes: a speaking engagement at a national summit on aging and innovation. She was to share her story alongside experts, activists, and fellow changemakers. Preparing for the summit, Evelyn reflected on how far she had come, from the quiet woman who once felt invisible to a leader inspiring thousands. Standing before the audience weeks later, Evelyn spoke with a clarity and passion that moved the room. She told them about the courage it took to start over, the power of small steps, and the transformative potential of embracing change at any age. Her words resonated deeply, sparking conversations that rippled beyond the summit's walls. Returning home, Evelyn sat by her window, watching the golden leaves fall. The journey to this moment had been filled with fear and hope, struggle and triumph. She smiled, knowing that the courage to start over wasn't about erasing the past but about embracing the present and building a future full of possibility. With renewed purpose, Evelyn turned back to her laptop, ready to begin the next chapter, not just of her story, but of countless others who dared to follow her lead. Evelyn sat alone in the quiet of her study, the soft glow of her desk lamp casting long shadows across the room. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the crisp scent of approaching winter. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the weight of everything: the years of doubt, the moments she had wanted to give up, the deep-seated fear that still sometimes clawed at her heart. Fear was a stubborn companion. It lived in the shadows of her mind, whispering reminders of limits, risks, and failures. But Evelyn had learned that fear didn't have to be the enemy; it could be a signpost, pointing toward the places she needed to grow. She thought about Elon Musk's words: "I think it is possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary." What had separated him, and now her, from the rest was the willingness to face fear head-on, to walk through it rather than around it. That evening, she decided to take a step that felt terrifying and exhilarating all at once. She signed up for a local public speaking workshop. Talking in front of a crowd was a lifelong fear, a barrier she had never crossed. But she knew that to lead others, she had to model bravery herself. The first session was nerve-wracking. Evelyn's hands trembled as she introduced herself, her voice barely above a whisper. But as the weeks went on, she found strength in vulnerability. Sharing her story, with all its imperfections, connected her with others who carried their own fears and hopes. The workshop became a sanctuary, a place where fear transformed into freedom, where hesitation gave way to confidence. One evening, after a particularly challenging exercise, Evelyn met Henry, a retired firefighter who had faced his own battles with fear after a near-fatal accident. They bonded over shared struggles and newfound courage, exchanging stories of reinvention and resilience. Henry's presence reminded Evelyn that fear was universal, but so was the capacity to overcome it. Outside the workshop, Evelyn's world was changing in subtle but profound ways. She noticed how fear no longer dictated her decisions; instead, it became a compass guiding her toward growth. She reached out to old friends she had lost touch with, mended strained relationships, and pursued opportunities that once seemed out of reach. One afternoon, Evelyn received an invitation to speak at a community event focused on mental health and aging. The idea of standing before an audience still made her stomach twist, but she embraced the challenge. On the day of the event, she walked onto the stage with a heart pounding in her chest but a mind clear with purpose. She spoke about fear, not as a weakness, but as a natural part of transformation. She shared her journey from paralysis to action, urging her listeners to embrace their fears and use them as fuel. The response was overwhelming. People approached her afterward, tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories of fear and hope. Evelyn realized that by embracing her vulnerability, she had given others permission to do the same. Back home, she reflected on how far she had come since the days when fear held her captive. The transformation wasn't about eliminating fear but about learning to live alongside it, using it as a catalyst rather than a cage. She felt a deep gratitude for the people who had inspired and supported her, the friends, the strangers, and yes, even Elon Musk, whose fearless example had sparked her own revolution. As winter's chill deepened, Evelyn found warmth in the knowledge that freedom was not the absence of fear but the courage to move forward despite it. She whispered to herself, "Fear is a sign I'm on the right path." And with that, she stepped boldly into the next chapter of her life, ready to inspire others to find their own freedom. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, the late afternoon sun filtering through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the worn oak surface. She had just finished a call with a local community center director, discussing plans for a new initiative, one that would bring seniors and younger generations together through shared creativity and mentorship. The idea was simple but powerful: to build bridges across age divides, shatter stereotypes, and create a space where experience met fresh perspective. Evelyn thought back to the countless times she had felt isolated, invisible, or dismissed simply because of her age. She remembered the sting of being told to slow down, the silence when she spoke of dreams, and the doubt that shadowed every attempt to start anew. Yet now, propelled by the courage she had cultivated and the spark from Elon Musk's refusal to accept limits, she was creating something bigger than herself. The pilot program was set to launch in a few weeks, and Evelyn was determined to make it a success. She recruited volunteers, artists, writers, retired professionals, students, all eager to connect and learn from one another. The first meeting was held in a sunlit community room, its walls adorned with paintings and photos from past local events. Nervous but hopeful, Evelyn welcomed a diverse group, a 22-year-old college student named Jamie, whose passion for technology was infectious, Robert, a 72-year-old former carpenter with a gift for storytelling, and Maya, her steadfast friend from California, who joined via video call to offer support and ideas. As the sessions unfolded, Evelyn witnessed moments of magic, young and old collaborating on projects, sharing life lessons, and breaking down assumptions. Jamie taught Robert how to create digital art, while Robert shared stories that sparked Jamie's imagination. Maya guided them through brainstorming exercises inspired by Elon Musk's approach to problem solving, encouraging radical thinking, resilience, and embracing failure as a step toward success. One afternoon, during a group workshop on overcoming fear and self-doubt, Evelyn shared her own journey, the moments when she had questioned herself, the times she had almost given up, and the fierce determination that kept her going. Her honesty sparked heartfelt conversations, and the room buzzed with newfound energy. The barriers between generations began to crumble, replaced by mutual respect and admiration. Word of the program spread quickly, drawing attention from local media and community leaders. Evelyn was invited to speak at schools, libraries, and civic events, sharing the vision of intergenerational collaboration as a path to healing and innovation. She emphasized that age was not a barrier but a bridge, connecting wisdom with curiosity, experience with enthusiasm. At home, Evelyn felt the warmth of a new purpose. The project reminded her that transformation wasn't a solo journey but a shared one, fueled by connection and community. She found joy in mentoring participants, celebrating their successes, and witnessing their confidence grow. Yet, the path wasn't without challenges. Skeptics questioned the feasibility of bridging such wide generational gaps, and some participants struggled to overcome their own biases. Evelyn met resistance with patience and persistence, always returning to the core belief that change was possible when people chose empathy over fear. One memorable moment came during a community showcase, where the group presented their collaborative projects. The room was filled with laughter, applause, and tears, proof that walls could be torn down, and new foundations built. Evelyn watched as Jamie and Robert stood side by side, sharing their work and the friendship that had blossomed. It was a living testament to the power of breaking barriers and building bridges. Inspired by the success, Evelyn expanded the initiative, partnering with local businesses and nonprofits to create opportunities for seniors to engage in entrepreneurship, arts, and technology. She advocated for policies that supported lifelong learning and intergenerational collaboration, speaking at city council meetings and regional conferences. Throughout it all, Evelyn never lost sight of the lesson Elon Musk had taught her: to think boldly, challenge the status quo, and embrace failure as a stepping stone. The bridges she helped build were not just about age, they were about breaking free from limiting beliefs and creating a future where everyone's voice mattered. On a crisp evening, as Evelyn walked home through the quiet streets, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey from isolation to connection had transformed her life, igniting a fire that now burned brightly in the hearts of many. She smiled, knowing that the bridges she built would carry others forward, toward hope, purpose, and belonging. In the stillness, Evelyn whispered, "Together, we are unstoppable." And with that, she stepped into the future she had helped create, a future where age was a bridge, not a barrier. Evelyn sat on the weathered bench in the park, the late spring sun warming her face as she watched children chase butterflies and elderly couples stroll hand in hand along winding paths. The laughter and life around her stirred a quiet reflection. Just months ago, she had felt trapped in a world that seemed to have no place for her anymore, too old, too forgotten, too worn. Yet now, with every step she had taken, every fear she had faced, something extraordinary was unfolding. Purpose was no longer a distant dream, it was a living, breathing force that filled her days with meaning. It hadn't come in the form she expected. Evelyn had imagined purpose as a grand, singular achievement, a project that would define her legacy. But what she found was something richer: the unexpected moments of connection, the small acts of courage, the ripple effects of her choices touching lives in ways she hadn't anticipated. She thought about the email she had received that morning, from a former student of her creative reinvention course, named Linda. Linda wrote about how, inspired by Evelyn's story, she had finally enrolled in art classes and reconnected with a son she had been estranged from for years. The tears Evelyn had shed reading the message were tears of joy, proof that even the smallest actions could ignite profound change. Her journey had become a mosaic of stories, each one unique but united by a thread of hope. Evelyn realized that purpose wasn't something to be found out there, it was something she created every day through her choices and connections. Inspired by this revelation, she began volunteering at the local senior center, leading workshops on storytelling and creative expression. The room buzzed with energy as participants shared their memories, fears, and dreams, finding healing in the act of telling their stories. Evelyn encouraged them to see their experiences not as burdens but as gifts, rich tapestries woven from resilience, love, and wisdom. One afternoon, a shy woman named Doris approached her after a session, holding a faded photo album. She confessed that she had never shared her story before, afraid it was too ordinary. Evelyn smiled and told her that every story mattered, that ordinary was often the most extraordinary. Encouraged, Doris began writing about her life, and over weeks, her confidence blossomed. Evelyn witnessed the transformative power of purpose. Not as a distant goal but as a daily practice of embracing vulnerability and authenticity. Meanwhile, Evelyn's relationships deepened. Claire, now a thriving writer, called often to share her progress and challenges. Their conversations were filled with laughter, advice, and mutual respect, healing old wounds and building new bonds. Evelyn felt the warmth of family rekindled, a legacy far richer than she had ever imagined. Yet, purpose also challenged Evelyn. There were moments of exhaustion, self-doubt, and the ache of loss that never fully disappeared. But she had learned to hold space for these feelings, recognizing them as part of the human experience. Elon Musk's words echoed in her mind, "Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough." She embraced failure not as defeat but as a stepping stone, a vital part of growth and discovery. The unexpected twists of her journey had taught her to trust the process, to find meaning even in uncertainty. One evening, Evelyn was invited to a dinner hosted by a foundation supporting innovative aging initiatives. Surrounded by passionate advocates and visionaries, she felt a sense of belonging and purpose that transcended her past struggles. When it was her turn to speak, she shared her story candidly, the fears, the failures, the breakthroughs, and the profound truth that purpose was not a destination but a journey. Her words resonated deeply, sparking conversations that extended long after the dinner ended. As she walked home under a sky filled with stars, Evelyn felt a quiet peace. The path she had traveled was far from easy, but it was hers. A testament to the power of resilience, courage, and the unexpected gifts life could offer. She whispered to the night, "Purpose is here, in every moment I choose to show up." And with that, Evelyn embraced the unfolding future, ready for whatever new surprises awaited. Evelyn sat in her favorite armchair by the window, the soft hum of the city outside mingling with the distant chirping of birds. The golden afternoon light filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a warm glow over the pages of the journal resting on her lap. She flipped back through the past few weeks' entries, a patchwork of hopes, frustrations, small victories, and moments of raw honesty. Despite the outward progress she had made, the successful launch of her course, the growing community she had fostered, and the connections she was rebuilding, there were nights like this, when doubt crept in and settled heavily in her chest. The question that haunted her more than any other was simple yet profound. Am I really making a difference? Or is this all just a fleeting dream? Evelyn knew the voice of doubt well. It was the same voice that had whispered to her during the long years of feeling invisible, the voice that told her to stop trying, to accept her place in the background, to let go of impossible dreams. Tonight, that voice was louder than usual. She closed her journal and leaned back, her eyes fixed on the pale blue sky fading into twilight. The silence was both comforting and suffocating. In the quiet, memories surfaced, moments of loneliness, the sting of a dismissive doctor's words, the cold distance of her children's skepticism. Those wounds, though softened by time, still pulsed beneath the surface. Evelyn thought about Elon Musk's journey, his willingness to push through failure, criticism, and setbacks. When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. She whispered the words to herself, trying to summon the courage they always gave her. But tonight, even that mantra felt fragile. In search of perspective, Evelyn turned on the television, flipping to a documentary about inventors and innovators who had changed the world. Scenes of struggle and triumph played out, failures that led to breakthroughs, setbacks that forged resilience. The stories were familiar, yet each time she saw them, a spark reignited inside her. Yet doubt lingered. Could she really be an innovator in her own right? Could her efforts truly ripple beyond her small circle? The phone rang, breaking her reverie. It was Claire. Their conversations had become a lifeline, moments of grounding and encouragement. Hearing her daughter's voice was balm for Evelyn's weary heart. Claire listened patiently as Evelyn shared her fears. "Mom, you've moved mountains," Claire said softly. "I see it every day. People are inspired by you, including me. Don't let doubt steal your light." The reassurance warmed Evelyn, but the shadows remained. After hanging up, she walked to the mirror, studying the lines etched by time. "Is this who I am now?" she wondered aloud. The woman staring back at her was both familiar and strange, strong yet vulnerable, hopeful yet weary. She thought of the small but bold steps she had taken, the lives touched, the bridges built. Doubt, she realized, was a part of the process, not a sign of weakness, but a challenge to be met. The next morning, Evelyn made a decision. She would not let doubt paralyze her. Instead, she would use it as a compass, a reminder to stay grounded and authentic. She wrote a heartfelt blog post titled, "When Doubt Creeps In, Why We Keep Going." The response was immediate and powerful. Emails poured in from readers who had faced similar fears, seniors questioning their worth, caregivers overwhelmed by responsibility, artists afraid their time had passed. Evelyn replied to each, sharing her story, encouraging honesty, and reminding them that doubt was not the end but a part of growth. In one message, a woman named Ruth wrote, "Your courage gives me hope to try again." Evelyn's heart swelled. The truth was clear: doubt could never erase the impact of authenticity and persistence. That week, she invited her community to share their own stories of doubt and resilience. The online forum blossomed into a space of vulnerability and strength. People admitted fears, celebrated small victories, and lifted each other up. Evelyn moderated with grace, feeling both humbled and empowered by the collective bravery. At a local library event, Evelyn spoke openly about doubt, weaving her own journey with the lessons she had learned from Elon Musk and others who refused to quit. The audience was rapt, many nodding, some wiping tears. Afterward, a man approached, thanking her for her honesty. "I've been stuck in fear for years," he said. "Hearing you reminds me it's never too late to move forward." Evelyn smiled, realizing that doubt was not a barrier but a bridge, connecting hearts, inspiring courage, and fueling transformation. That night, as she prepared for bed, Evelyn felt lighter. The shadows of doubt still lingered but no longer dominated. Instead, they served as reminders of the journey, its challenges and its profound beauty. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I am enough, even in the doubt." And with that, she embraced the truth that growth was not linear, but a dance of light and shadow, courage and vulnerability, a dance she was now ready to lead. Evelyn stood before the full-length mirror in her bedroom, tracing the lines on her face as if reading the story of her life etched in every crease. The reflection staring back was that of a woman transformed, no longer the hesitant, unsure Evelyn who had spent decades hiding behind regret and fear. She was someone who had reinvented herself not once, but many times over, and yet the journey was far from over. Reinvention was not about denying the past, it was about weaving it into a new tapestry of hope and possibility. She thought about Elon Musk's relentless pursuit of innovation, his refusal to accept "no" as an answer, and his willingness to risk everything in the name of progress. His mindset had been a beacon during her darkest moments, a call to action that said, "Change is always possible, no matter your age." Today, Evelyn had a new project, a book she was writing that combined memoir and inspiration, aimed at encouraging others to embrace reinvention. The process was exhilarating and terrifying. Some days the words flowed like a river, other days they dried up like a desert. But she persisted, knowing that her story could be a lighthouse for those adrift in the storm of self-doubt. In the community she had nurtured, Evelyn saw countless examples of reinvention: Robert, who had started a woodworking business in his 70s, Jamie, whose passion for tech had blossomed into a startup, and Maya, who had pivoted careers to become a life coach. Each person's journey was unique, but all shared a common thread: the courage to begin again. One afternoon, Evelyn was invited to speak at a regional conference focused on aging and innovation. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as she took the stage, her heart pounding but her voice steady. She began with a question: what does it mean to reinvent yourself? The crowd was silent, waiting for her answer. Evelyn shared her story, the fears, the failures, the breakthroughs, and the powerful lesson that reinvention was less about drastic change and more about incremental steps fueled by passion and purpose. She spoke about the importance of mindset, quoting Elon Musk, "Constantly seek criticism. A well-thought-out critique of what you're doing is as valuable as gold." She encouraged the audience to embrace feedback, to view setbacks as opportunities, and to cultivate curiosity like a child discovering the world anew. The response was overwhelming. Hands shot up, stories poured out, and Evelyn found herself surrounded by people hungry for change, no matter their age. After the conference, a woman approached her with tears in her eyes. "You've given me permission to dream again," she said. Evelyn smiled, realizing that reinvention was contagious. It sparked hope and fueled action. Back home, Evelyn's days were filled with writing, mentoring, and exploring new creative outlets. She took up painting, a hobby she had abandoned decades ago, and found solace in the vibrant colors and textures that emerged on the canvas. The act of creation itself was a form of reinvention, a reminder that life was an evolving masterpiece. Yet, reinvention was not without its challenges. Evelyn grappled with moments of frustration, the pressure to succeed, and the fear of disappointing those who believed in her. She leaned on her support network, Claire, Maya, Henry, and found strength in their unwavering belief. One rainy evening, as thunder rumbled outside, Evelyn sat by the window reflecting on her journey. She realized that reinvention required patience and compassion, not just for others, but for herself. The path was winding and unpredictable, but every step forward was a victory. She thought of the countless seniors she had met who believed their time had passed, their dreams extinguished. Evelyn's mission became clear: to rewrite the narrative around aging, to show that reinvention was not the exception but the rule. The next morning, Evelyn launched a new online platform dedicated to lifelong learning and creativity for older adults. It offered workshops, forums, and resources designed to empower people to take bold steps toward their dreams. The response was immediate and passionate, a testament to the hunger for change that existed in every corner of her community. As she read through the first wave of messages, Evelyn felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her journey, from isolation to connection, from fear to freedom, had come full circle. She was no longer waiting for permission to matter. She was living proof that reinvention was a lifelong gift, one that could ignite at any moment. That night, as she closed her eyes, Evelyn whispered a vow to herself: "I will keep reinventing, keep dreaming, keep daring." The future was unwritten, and she was ready to write it boldly. Evelyn sat in the back row of the packed community hall, the murmurs of conversation swirling around her like a gentle tide. Tonight was a town hall meeting, a forum where residents gathered to discuss pressing local issues, but for Evelyn, it represented something much more personal, a test of courage. For years, she had been the quiet observer, the one who listened but rarely spoke up. The lingering doubt that her voice didn't matter, that her opinions were irrelevant because of her age, had held her back. But the spark Elon Musk had ignited within her, his fearless defiance of limits and norms, was urging her forward. She clutched a folded sheet of paper in her hand, notes she had prepared over days. The issue on the table was the closure of the senior center, a vital resource for many in the community. The news had hit Evelyn hard. This center had been a lifeline, a place where she and others found connection, learning, and purpose. As the meeting progressed, familiar voices expressed resignation or apathy. Some suggested it was inevitable, a casualty of budget cuts and shifting priorities. Evelyn's heart ached. Was this how they would be discarded? Forgotten? Then came a moment of silence after a council member finished speaking. The moderator invited comments from the audience. Evelyn's throat tightened. The room seemed to hold its breath. She unfolded her notes, took a deep breath, and stood. Her legs trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "I'm Evelyn Thompson, and I've been part of this community for over 30 years. The senior center isn't just a building. It's where lives are changed, where friendships are forged, where hope is rekindled." She glanced around the room, meeting eyes, some curious, some skeptical, others encouraging. We often hear that older adults are a burden or past their prime. But that's not true. We are vibrant, contributing members of this community. Closing this center sends a message that we don't matter. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Evelyn pressed on, sharing stories of how the center had helped her rediscover purpose, connect with others, and inspire change. She spoke about the intergenerational programs she had launched, the workshops, the support networks. If we lose this place, we lose more than a building. We lose a vital thread in the fabric of our town. As she spoke, she felt a shift in the room, a softening, a stirring. When she finished, the applause was gentle but genuine. Evelyn sat down, heart pounding but filled with a quiet triumph. After the meeting, several people approached her, expressing gratitude and renewed hope. A local journalist asked to interview her for the newspaper, eager to share her story. Over the next weeks, Evelyn became a vocal advocate, organizing petitions, rallying supporters, and speaking at city council meetings. She harnessed the same boldness she admired in Elon Musk, the willingness to disrupt the status quo and fight for what mattered. The journey wasn't easy. She faced criticism from those who thought she was stirring trouble or wasting time. Her children worried she was overextending herself. But Evelyn's resolve only grew stronger. She remembered Musk's words, "When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor." She was determined to prove that age was not a limitation but a source of strength. One chilly evening, after a particularly heated council meeting, Evelyn stood outside the building, breath-forming clouds in the air. She was joined by Maya and Claire, their presence a reminder that she was not alone. They wrapped their arms around each other, drawing strength from their bond. In that moment, Evelyn realized that speaking up was not just about saving a building, it was about reclaiming dignity, agency, and hope for all who had been sidelined by society. The campaign gained momentum. Media coverage highlighted stories of seniors breaking stereotypes and contributing in meaningful ways. Younger residents volunteered to support the cause, bridging the generational gap Evelyn had worked so hard to narrow. Months later, the council voted to keep the senior center open, albeit with a reduced budget but renewed commitment. The victory was sweet, but Evelyn knew it was only the beginning. Speaking up had opened doors, for herself and her community. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it. Her voice mattered. Her story mattered. As she walked home that night beneath a sky bursting with stars, Evelyn felt a deep sense of peace and purpose. The woman who had once doubted her worth was now a beacon of change. And in that transformation lay the true power of reinvention. She smiled and whispered to the night, "I will speak, I will lead, I will shine." Evelyn sat at her cluttered kitchen table, a fresh cup of coffee steaming gently beside her laptop. The early morning light streamed through the window, casting long shadows over the scattered papers and notes from her latest venture. After the success of the Senior Center campaign, she felt a new wave of energy, an urge to keep pushing, to keep growing. Change had become her companion, no longer something to fear but something to embrace. The truth was, Evelyn was hungry for new challenges. For years, she had been stuck in the quiet rhythms of routine, comfortable yet unfulfilled. But now, inspired by Elon Musk's fearless approach to problem-solving and relentless innovation, she was ready to step beyond the familiar once more. The idea had come to her during a late-night podcast featuring Musk discussing the power of asking, "What if?" What if aging didn't mean slowing down, but accelerating in new directions? What if seniors could lead the charge in tech innovation, entrepreneurship, and community transformation? With those questions planted firmly in her mind, Evelyn began drafting a proposal for a local incubator designed specifically for older adults, a place where they could learn new skills, develop business ideas, and connect with mentors. She envisioned a space buzzing with creativity, collaboration, and courage. But the path to launching such a bold initiative was filled with hurdles. Funding was scarce, skeptics were many, and the logistics complex. Evelyn knew it wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that every great innovation started with a leap of faith. The first step was to reach out to the local government and community leaders. She crafted a compelling presentation, weaving in stories from her own journey and testimonials from others who had reinvented themselves. When the day came to present, Evelyn's hands trembled slightly, but her voice was clear and passionate. She described the potential impact, economic, social, emotional, and painted a vivid picture of a community transformed by the power of lifelong learning and innovation. The room was quiet at first, the officials absorbing her vision. Then questions came, some skeptical, some curious. Evelyn answered with honesty and conviction, refusing to back down in the face of doubt. Afterward, a few attendees approached, intrigued and supportive. It was a start. Undeterred by the challenges, Evelyn began networking, tapping into her growing circle of friends, mentors, and supporters. She connected with tech companies, non-profit organizations, and educational institutions willing to collaborate. Slowly but surely, the pieces began to fall into place. Along the way, Evelyn encountered moments of frustration. The endless paperwork, the slow pace of bureaucracy, the occasional dismissive comment about her age or ambitions. But each time doubt crept in, she recalled Musk's words, "Persistence is very important. You should not give up unless you are forced to give up." She refused to be forced to give up. Meanwhile, Evelyn's personal life blossomed in tandem. Her daughter Claire, inspired by her mother's courage, decided to pursue a new career path herself, diving into nonprofit work focused on senior advocacy. Their bond deepened, their conversations rich with shared dreams and mutual respect. Evelyn also found joy in mentoring others, seeing firsthand how new challenges sparked renewed confidence and purpose in those she guided. One chilly autumn afternoon, Evelyn walked through the town square, stopping to chat with Robert, the woodworker turned entrepreneur she had met months before. He shared news of his growing business, crediting Evelyn's encouragement as a turning point. She smiled, realizing that challenges were not just obstacles but opportunities to uplift and inspire. As winter approached, Evelyn's incubator project gained momentum. Volunteers signed up, workshops were planned, and local media began covering the initiative. She marveled at how far she had come, from a woman who once felt invisible to a leader driving change. Yet Evelyn remained grounded, aware that embracing new challenges required balance, between ambition and self-care, between pushing forward and pausing to reflect. She took time for quiet walks, journaling, and moments of gratitude. One evening, she sat by the fire, reflecting on the transformation within herself. The woman who had once dreaded aging now welcomed it as a gateway to growth. She realized that the secret wasn't in avoiding challenges, but in embracing them with open arms and an open heart. Elon Musk's example had shown her that age was no barrier to innovation or impact. With renewed resolve, Evelyn whispered into the crackling flames, "The best is yet to come." Evelyn stepped into the bustling community center, the hum of voices and laughter wrapping around her like a warm embrace. It was a Saturday morning, and the incubator she had fought so hard to create was finally alive with energy and purpose. People of all ages mingled, seniors eager to learn new skills, volunteers offering guidance, local entrepreneurs sharing wisdom. The air was thick with hope and possibility. This was the vision she had dreamed of, the tangible proof that reinvention wasn't just a personal journey but a collective one. As Evelyn wandered through the room, she spotted familiar faces, Robert setting up a woodworking demo, Maya leading a mindfulness workshop, Jamie excitedly pitching her new app idea. Each person radiated the courage to start anew, to challenge the limits society often placed on aging. Evelyn's heart swelled. It was a moment she had longed for during lonely nights of doubt and hesitation. Here was a community bound by resilience and mutual support. The incubator had become more than a space, it was a movement. Later, Evelyn gathered a small group for a storytelling session, a place where participants shared their struggles and triumphs. When it was her turn, she spoke openly about the journey that had led her here, the fear of fading away, the power of Elon Musk's fearless mindset, the choice to fight for her worth. Tears glistened in her eyes as she told them, "We are not defined by our age, but by the fire we keep burning inside." The room was silent, then erupted into applause. One woman, an 80-year-old former teacher named Linda, approached Evelyn afterward. "Your story gave me strength to start my own art classes," she said. "You remind me it's never too late." Evelyn smiled, realizing that strength wasn't just her own, it was the strength they all shared when they came together. That evening, Evelyn reflected on the power of community. For so long, she had walked her path in isolation, burdened by loneliness and the false belief that change was a solitary endeavor. Now she saw that transformation flourished in connection, in shared stories, collective encouragement, and the simple act of showing up for one another. Inspired by this realization, Evelyn organized a monthly gathering called The Next Chapter Circle, inviting seniors and allies to come together, exchange ideas, and support each other's dreams. The first meeting was a beautiful tapestry of voices, some tentative, others bold, each adding a unique thread to the fabric of hope they were weaving. The circle became a sanctuary, a place where vulnerability met strength, and where every story was honored. As word spread, younger generations joined, bridging gaps and fostering understanding. Evelyn watched as friendships blossomed across age divides, barriers dissolved, and a shared vision of possibility took root. One afternoon, during a workshop on digital skills, Evelyn noticed a shy man named George struggling with the tablet in his hands. She sat beside him, offering gentle guidance and encouragement. Over weeks, George transformed from hesitant to confident, eventually volunteering to help others learn. His smile, broad and genuine, was a testament to the power of patience and community. The incubator was more than a project, it was a living, breathing example of what could happen when people refused to let age define their potential. Evelyn often thought back to the early days when doubt had threatened to overwhelm her. Now she saw doubt not as an enemy, but as a catalyst that had propelled her toward deeper connection and impact. As winter melted into spring, Evelyn received an invitation to speak at a national conference on aging innovation. Standing on that grand stage, she shared the story of the incubator and the circle, emphasizing the importance of community in fueling reinvention. She quoted Elon Musk, "Some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change if the alternative is disaster." Her words resonated deeply, sparking conversations and partnerships across the country. After the speech, a young woman approached Evelyn, her eyes shining with admiration. "You've changed my view of what it means to grow older," she said. "Thank you for showing us it's about strength, connection, and purpose." Evelyn's smile was radiant. She knew that the journey ahead would have its challenges, but with the strength of community behind her, she was ready to face anything. As she looked out at the horizon that evening, the sky painted with hues of orange and pink, Evelyn felt a profound sense of belonging and hope. The road to reinvention was not a solitary path, but one traveled together. And in that truth lay the greatest strength of all. Evelyn sat alone in the dim light of her study, the glow from her laptop screen casting long shadows across the walls. The incubator was thriving, the community growing stronger every day, yet inside her, a quiet storm brewed. Fear had begun to creep in, a whisper questioning if she was truly capable of sustaining this momentum, if she had bitten off more than she could chew. It was a fear she had learned to recognize but never fully conquer. As she stared at the blank page before her, the words, "What if I fail?" echoed relentlessly. It was a question that had haunted her for years, one she had hidden beneath layers of determination. She thought back to the early days when she first dared to speak up at the town hall, the tremble in her voice masking a deeper anxiety about rejection and ridicule. And yet, that moment had sparked a fire that no fear could extinguish. Tonight, though, the old doubts felt louder. Evelyn opened a podcast featuring Elon Musk, hoping for a spark of inspiration. Musk's voice filled the room, "Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough." The words hit her like a lifeline. Failure was not the enemy, it was a necessary step on the path to growth. She realized that fear and failure were intertwined companions, each offering lessons if only one had the courage to listen. The next morning, Evelyn shared her thoughts with Claire during their breakfast. Claire, ever the optimist, reminded her, "Mom, you've faced setbacks before. Remember the senior center fight? You turned doubt into determination." Evelyn smiled, grateful for her daughter's unwavering support. "It's just hard to shake the feeling that one misstep could unravel everything," she confessed. Claire reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "That's exactly why you keep going. Because you know it's worth it. Embracing that truth, Evelyn decided to hold a workshop at the incubator titled Fail Forward. She wanted to create a space where people could openly discuss fear and failure without shame. The turnout was larger than she expected, a testament to how universal these feelings were, regardless of age or background. Participants shared stories of dreams delayed, businesses that faltered, relationships that fractured. The room was heavy with vulnerability, but beneath that lay a powerful current of resilience. Evelyn spoke candidly about her own struggles, the moments when she had almost given up. Failure is not a destination, she told them. It's a detour, a lesson, a stepping stone. The question is not if you will fail, but what you will do when you do. The energy in the room shifted. Fear, once a barrier, became a bridge. Participants left inspired, ready to embrace their imperfections and take bold steps forward. Over the following weeks, Evelyn noticed a change in herself too. She allowed space for mistakes, understanding that growth required patience and grace. She celebrated small wins and learned to view setbacks as opportunities for reflection and recalibration. One day, while working late on grant proposals, Evelyn received a call from Maya. Her voice was urgent. "Evelyn, we've hit a snag with one of our biggest funding sources. They're pulling back." Panic rose in Evelyn's chest, but she forced herself to breathe deeply. This was the kind of challenge she had prepared for. She and Maya brainstormed late into the night, devising alternative plans, reaching out to new contacts, and rallying their network. It was exhausting and uncertain, but Evelyn refused to succumb to despair. She reminded herself of Musk's resilience, his relentless pursuit despite countless setbacks. Months later, the incubator secured diversified funding from a surprising source, a group of local businesses inspired by Evelyn's vision and commitment. The victory felt sweeter because it had been hard-won. Evelyn gathered her team to celebrate, acknowledging the fears and failures that had shaped their journey. Standing before them, she said, "We didn't just build a program. We built courage. We learned that failure is part of success, and fear is fuel if we let it be." As spring gave way to summer, Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose. Fear and failure no longer controlled her story, instead, they were chapters in a larger narrative of resilience and reinvention. She knew the road ahead would have twists and turns, but she was ready. Looking out over the town she loved, Evelyn whispered, "I am not afraid. I will fail, I will rise, and I will keep moving forward." Evelyn stood at the edge of the town's new community garden, the soft spring breeze carrying the scent of fresh earth and blooming flowers. Around her, volunteers planted seedlings, laughter and conversation weaving through the air like music. It was a far cry from the lonely kitchen where she had once felt invisible and forgotten. Today, she was surrounded by a vibrant tapestry of life and connection, a living symbol of the journey she had undertaken. This garden wasn't just about growing plants, it was about cultivating hope, renewal, and a legacy that transcended age. As she watched a group of young children carefully water the beds, Evelyn felt a deep sense of peace. The years of struggle, doubt, and fear had led to this moment, a new beginning. Reflecting on her transformation, she realized how much had changed. She was no longer the woman who sat silently, waiting for permission to matter. She had become a catalyst, a leader, and a beacon of possibility. The fire Elon Musk had sparked within her, the belief that limitations were meant to be challenged, had become her guiding light. The garden project had started as a simple idea in the incubator, born from a desire to create a shared space where generations could come together. It had faced obstacles, funding challenges, weather setbacks, skepticism. But like every step of her journey, Evelyn had met them with resilience and hope. As the community gathered for the garden's official opening, Evelyn took the podium. Her voice carried the strength of every story she had lived and heard. "This garden is more than soil and seeds," she said. "It's a testament to the power of perseverance, connection, and the courage to begin again. We plant not just for today, but for the future we believe in." Applause filled the air, but it was the faces in the crowd, young and old, familiar and new, that held the real meaning. Evelyn spotted Claire standing nearby, eyes shining with pride, and Maya chatting animatedly with neighbors. Their presence was a reminder that her journey had created ripples far beyond herself. Later that evening, Evelyn sat quietly in her favorite chair, the weight of the day settling over her like a comforting shawl. She thought about the moments that had defined her path. The fear that once paralyzed her, the choice to speak up, the small steps that had led to big change. She realized that every ending was simply the start of something new. Her phone buzzed with a message from a young woman she had mentored months ago. "Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to dream big. Your story keeps me going." Evelyn smiled, tears prickling at her eyes. She had found her purpose not by clinging to the past but by embracing the present and daring to shape the future. The world she had feared shutting her out was instead opening its arms. As she prepared for bed, Evelyn thought about Elon Musk's relentless pursuit of the impossible. She understood now that it wasn't about being fearless but about moving forward despite fear. She whispered softly, "I was never too old. I was just waiting for permission to matter again." And in that moment, she gave herself permission. Permission to live boldly, to keep dreaming, to inspire. Outside, the night sky stretched vast and infinite, a reminder that the possibilities ahead were boundless. Evelyn closed her eyes, ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing her story was far from over, it was just beginning. The new beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?